Well, doesn't it to be reacting to a Newcastle United win and a performance from Newcastle United as well? Just wait for a few people to join the live. I decided this time to um, publish it before the game rather than rushing after the game with a thumbnail and the score and everything. I've just decided to do it before the game, so hopefully you guys can join. I've started it a little bit early. Hopefully you guys can join straight away and we can get involved. But uh, just for the benefit, nobody's in at the moment. I did start it a little bit um, early, but the benefit of those watching back, Newcastle United have just beaten Chelsea 2-0 at St James's Park in the Carabao Cup fourth round. They're into the quarterfinals, 2 games from Wembley, and trying to avenge that defeat against Manchester United in 2022. That's a long way off, but it felt good to be watching a Newcastle United performance. Apologies, by the way, if you can see some boxes in the background. I've just noticed that. Yeah, it feels a little bit like this is a Newcastle United side that had been waiting to come out and needed to show itself. So once people have joined, please do, as I say, drop some stuff in the comments. I'm just going to move those boxes actually. That's for the benefit of everybody who, and you can still see them, but that's for the benefit of everyone watching this back. Yeah, if you are in the live, please do like the stream and then join. Put some stuff in the comments, and we can get going. But I thought that was a really, really good Newcastle United performance. It was what you expected and what you hoped for, wasn't it? Energetic, powerful, pacey in the first half. It was everything. Actually, I would go so far as to say it was everything. All the hallmarks that we've complained haven't been there from 22-23 were back. They weren't back at the same time, but they were back. In the first half, they were energetic, they were powerful, they were pacey. In the second half, they were much more compact, and they made it very difficult. The box was really difficult to breach, and that was sort of what the whole point of the Dan Burn playing at left back thing was, to make it really difficult with a really tall back line, and it worked. And I think that this is a really, really good day for Newcastle, and it could be the start of something at the start of this season. A couple of people joining in the live. As I say, apologies, I started it a little bit early just to sort of settle in. But what did you think of the game? What went right for Newcastle? There's quite a lot. I think everybody was fantastic, and we've got so much to get through over the next sort of half an hour, 40 minutes. Because I'm appreciated. It is quite late, so yeah, do drop some thoughts into the comment section. Like the stream as soon as you join it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Plenty more content, Newcastle United and general football, coming on the channel in the next few weeks, I guess. I'm at Hull City on Saturday against Portsmouth, so that's the next step on the journey around England and Europe. If you haven't heard about that, that's what's happening on the weekends. I'm starting a new venture across English and European football, finding different stories, talking to different people, and sort of bringing you the sort of football in the community at different levels across the game. But yeah, while we're here to talk about Newcastle United, like the stream, subscribe, and chuck some stuff into the live. And Ian is first in. Tell me, Mark, we're going to Wembley. It does feel good, doesn't it, Ian, to feel like coming off the bat. I think ultimately the thing that I want to say is it feels good to be talking about a good performance and a win off the back of a good performance, and not having to think about the really deep issues and how a mistake here or a moment here led to thinking back to the fact that they didn't sign a new right winger, or the centre backs were exposed and there was no pace and nothing up front, and all this sort of stuff that we've been going through this season. It feels different tonight. It feels like Newcastle have fully deserved their win. I thought, lots of people might say to themselves and might say, that the second half was nervy. It wasn't nervy, in my opinion. It was managed really well, I thought, from Newcastle's perspective. It was they got the lead, they did what they needed to do, and then they sat back and told Chelsea to break them down. And Chelsea created quite a bit in the second half in terms of that hard opportunity for João Felix, who I'm a fan of. Always have been, but it's difficult to keep being when he's putting in performances like that where he's so poor in front of goal. Noni Madueke came in for them, but as Ian's pointed out, they played the second string. I think they made 11 changes, and I think Enzo Maresca's, to Ian's point, imagine not playing Cole Palmer. I mean, that's the thing you would say once they lose a game, you pick on the team that they don't play. But it feels like they've got that big enough squad to deal with that. That's what they'll think, and they didn't really. They didn't. They looked shocked. And actually, again, I want to go back to a thing that I've said in previous weeks about this. I was on True Faith where we did podcasts about the upcoming games and the two Chelsea games, home in the cup, away in the league at the weekend, and how we were basically flipped on the perspective of whether Newcastle would perform well and how well Newcastle would do. And they didn't. It sort of went the way I thought it would. Newcastle were guilty of playing the ball with no pace and no zip into the midfield from the defence and allowing Chelsea to turn over them on Sunday. That was exactly what Chelsea did to Newcastle, or allowed Newcastle to do to them. Tonight. Isak was really good. Willock was phenomenal. I thought Joe Linton was really good as well on that left-hand side. It's no coincidence that Newcastle's energy levels, Newcastle's press, and therefore Newcastle's effectiveness in the game was all at a high level when Joe Linton and Willock were on that left-hand side together, linking up well with Lewis Hall, and the energy levels were, they were up high. And that was for the first time since Girona in the Salah Cup. Actually, I came away from the first day in the Salah Cup thinking a week before the season, Newcastle looked really energetic. They looked like they were about to attack the season. It was that performance, even though it was only a friendly, gave me a lot of hope that was what at least they were going to try and do, and we haven't seen that since. Tonight was a return to that, and I think it was a welcome return to that as well. So I think I really want to give props to Willock and Joe Linton on the left, Lloyd Kelly at the back. Not had many chances in the league, but really made a huge impact in the game tonight. And I thought also Sean Longstaff as well. Sean Longstaff, lots of people will keep coming back and saying, that of what they say in the comment section, that he's not good enough, and lots of people say on Twitter that he's not good enough. But it's not, as I said, I think we saw tonight, it's not about what he does or doesn't bring. It's about himself. It's about what he allows the players to do. And I thought, I was really, I thought, so David's just said, encouraging. Tonali was excellent, played in the centre. I think he really helped. I think he really benefited in the way Bruno has from playing alongside Longstaff, who does those things that you don't see, and lots of those sort of energetic, just the energy levels, knitting everything together. When I looked at the starting 11, I was really convinced that the midfield would work better tonight because there was Longstaff next to Tonali, allowing Tonali to dictate things and do his own thing without sort of leaving loads of gaps in the middle. And I think that was kind of why it worked. That's not to take away from Tonali as well. Really, really good. And David's pointed out Asula came off the wings. Well, Asula came off the bench, and you could tell for the first time, I think, that he really staked a claim in terms of for the future. I think he's struggled a little bit. He's put himself about again in the game against Wimbledon. Didn't have much service. So there was a lovely little layoff and touch. Then he hit the post from outside the box, really powerful. And I've watched a bit of him from Sheffield United, as I said in my videos before, and it really he gave me a lot of encouragement when that he would be a long-term success. I still think the issue lies that there's still that gap when Isak isn't there in big games. Can you rely? And all those things are still true. But I think lots of people will come away from watching Asula tonight and saying that there at least feels like it's understandable where they're going to. What the thought process was with him. So yeah, really, really good performance from him. Who was your man of the match? That's what I want to know in the comment section. Bring it back to give me your thoughts back. Start again. Your thoughts to in the chat on your man of the match. For me, I think it was Willock. I think he was so energetic. So when he's on form, he's virtually unplayable at times. And I thought, yeah, he made a real difference for Newcastle tonight, alongside Jonathan. As I said, it felt like a return to basics, and I think that's what I'll go into more detail on with my analysis video tomorrow, where I'll talk a little bit about how it worked and why it worked a little bit better. And I think Chelsea also played into Newcastle's hands in that first half. Enzo Maresca should have been a bit less naive, I guess, in my opinion, to say that Newcastle are so good at St James's Park. Obviously, the Brighton game is a disappointment, but only one other defeat at home this calendar year for Newcastle. And what they do really well is pressing and intensity in transitions. That's what they've shown. Why come and play and try and get 70% possession? It just gave the game and the initiative to Newcastle, and their defence wasn't brave enough. Disasi and Tosin Adarabioyo really had a difficult time in that first half. I'm sure there were lots of Newcastle fans that are quite pleased that Tosin didn't have his best game. Ian said Cher's had a great game. I think Cher had a fantastic game as well. I think everyone was very good, but I think Cher deserves a lot of credit. Also, shout out to Emil Kraft for turning into prime Maradona for about 30 seconds in that second half, setting up the Asula chance with that lovely little run into the dribbling into the middle of the pitch, and then cutting back and then laying off this beautiful pass. It was absolutely spot on. So really good performance overall for Newcastle. And do you feel like, let me know if you think how you think, is it giving you new fresh confidence for the season? Obviously the draw will be a little bit delayed. I was thinking maybe that I'd still be on the live if once the draw happened, but obviously the Man City game kicked off at 8:15, so that's still got a little bit of time to run. So it might be done by the time the live is the draw is on. But it feels like Newcastle got an opportunity now to I don't know the other results. Obviously, I know Manchester United beat Leicester. Did Villa get through or Palace get through? I didn't see that because obviously as soon as full time went, I came up here to set up, so I haven't actually seen the results. But be hugely disappointing for Villa if they went out. Let me just check that actually. But yeah, how do you feel like it went? And who was your man match? Obviously, Ian's shout for Cher is very good. I think Willock, but also, as I say, Longstaff deserves a huge amount of credit. Tonali was a lot more comfortable, as David says as well. Yeah, Palace beat Villa, which is really so it's Liverpool, Palace, Manchester United, Arsenal, Newcastle, either Spurs at the moment. It looks like against Man City, which is another huge result, plus Brentford and Southampton. So very Premier League heavy, quite big as well. A lot of teams. It looks like it's going to be a competitive end to this competition. So it'll not be an easy quarter-final game, but I think I don't know if have the quarter. I don't know if the semi-finals have been dropped to one game from two games, because otherwise it'll be 3 games from Wembley, not 2, as I said earlier. But yeah, let me know what you thought in the of the game, as I said. And also, as I say, it was just nice to feel. It was just nice to sort of see a good performance, and it's been a very very confusing season because, as I've said, in terms of the results not being too bad, and that record of Longstaff for all the stick that he gets, I think with Longstaff it needs to be treated as two different things now. I think it needs to be treated as what he's like, and on the ball and what he actually brings as a player himself as an individual. I think that's got to be questioned because he's not confident in possession. Obviously, he isn't as effective as Tonali, as creative as Bruno, and as powerful as Joe Linton. That's why that midfield has been working. But as I say, he doesn't get any credit for what he does do, which is make those other players look better. I remember being at Sheffield United last season, the 8-0, and it was the first game I think that Longstaff had come in for Tonali. I remember it vividly. And Bruno had a difficult start to the season as he has this year. His energy levels um, weren't great, and uh, suddenly when he played next to Longstaff, he got the freedom to do a bit more and affect the game. And I think that's what Longstaff brings. And I think it's not crazy to say that, and it also doesn't mean it isn't black or white. Ironically, pardon the pun, to say that to give credit to credit Longstaff, because I think that just because you credit him and say that he does something well doesn't mean that I'm saying that he's got to be the answer, because I think long term, financially, for every reason in terms of quality, Tonali, Bruno, and probably Joe Linton is the way forward. Although I do think again tonight was another bit of evidence as to why Joe Linton is not a long term part of that midfield three if Newcastle really do want to progress in the way that they claim that they do. But yeah, I think Longstaff showed again tonight that he doesn't deserve the stick that he gets at times, and what he does bring is a lot more valuable than a lot of people think. David says, I hope we get Southampton at home, but I know it'll be a tough away match. Well, I think the point I was trying to make was I think a lot of the games will be tough. Manchester United might well have Ruben Amorim in by the time that they will do, because it will be beyond the 10th of November, which is apparently the latest that he'll get hired. And then obviously the winner of this game that I've got in the background at the moment as well, Spurs City, whoever that game's going to be, is going to be difficult, particularly away from home. But I think Newcastle, the thing I will say is I think Newcastle can beat anybody at St James's Park. And I think there's a really good opportunity there. And I agree with your Hall assessment, David. I think Lewis Hall is fast becoming a really, really consistent attacking fullback. Still some naiveties defensively, still some maybe switching off. I think he gave the ball away a couple of times tonight, but really, really excellent in possession, and the way he gets the ball forward, really, really cultured player. I love watching him play. I think he's a really, really, really good footballer. I think he's going to become a huge star for Newcastle, but not just Newcastle, for England as well. And as I say, I think Longstaff and Tonali, I wasn't surprised that Tonali and Longstaff worked well together in the same way that Tonali and Bruno have worked well together, because it allows Tonali the ability to just focus on his job and dictating the players he did in that central area. And I understand at the same time why a few people are saying that perhaps it's a seminal moment for the Bruno Tonali axis, and maybe if Tonali sits deeper and allows Bruno to dictate play further up the pitch and play as a number 8, perhaps that's the way forward. And it's about the sort of it's about the chemistry, and I think that hasn't quite found. I still think it'll work, and it has worked, but the one game that I remember thinking it worked last season before his ban was PSG at home, and guess who their midfield partner was that day? So it's there's plenty of reasons to be positive about tonight, but I think there's got to be a few thoughts about that midfield makeup. Do you sacrifice a key player? I mean, maybe we've struck up the answer an answer that I floated, I think, pre Everton, I think, which was Gordon on the right and Joe Linton on the left. Maybe that is the short term answer to the left to the winger situation. But obviously Harvey Barnes is coming into there as well. So there's plenty of options. The issue is that I think that has been the problem so far this season is that that there hasn't been a moment where you've looked at it and thought it all quite fits together. I think tonight was the first example where actually there was a way forward. You think, okay, Chelsea gifted certain aspects of the game in terms of allowing Newcastle to play the way that they wanted to, and allowing and not playing the ball out with enough vigor, as I said earlier, and enough verve, and just lacking a lot of awareness in that first half, and that was really what undid them. But no, I think that was a really good. I think that tonight is the first time I've come away from Newcastle thinking they've won a game in a way that can provide a base, because the Wolves game, for example, was just sort of it was moments. It was Cher's goal and Hall's and Barnes' goal, sorry, and then Spurs. As I say, that coming off, I was in Paris at the Spurs game, so I didn't watch it closely, but the narrative that came away from that game was that if Spurs had a striker, they'd have won that game. Southampton is, I think, a game in its own, because of going down to 10 men after 25 minutes, the way they did that day, was always going to be difficult to dominate a game against a team that wants to dominate the ball, as Southampton did. So this is the first time I think I've come away from a home game and thought there's a blueprint for the future here. Newcastle have found, they've gone back to basics a bit, and it's worked. Joe Linton on that left-hand side, linking up with Willock, it just had so many 2022, 2023 vibes. And Lloyd Kelly, as I say, he struggled a little bit to get himself into the team. Dan Burn has been phenomenal. I think that's partly why I don't think it's that Kelly's not. I think it's Kelly's not done much particularly wrong, but Lewis Hall has made left back his own, as has just been mentioned, and Dan Burn has generally been really, really good this season. But perhaps off the back of that difficulty that Burn had against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge on Sunday, and Kelly coming in and doing such a good job and looking, really comfortable and looking a little bit more fleet-footed than Burn, as you would imagine, just felt a little bit like it was a better situation for Newcastle, and maybe that could be worth a run. Or do you change it? Do you change your back line and bring in somebody who's, in terms of league form, out from the cold against a team like Arsenal? I don't know, but it feels like it's given Eddie Howe a bit of a headache to have Lloyd Kelly in that position, in that form, I think, and that's a really, really good positive thing. I don't know. I think Bruno came on and was really sort of calming influence, really good on the ball. You see the level. I think it's easy to forget how good Bruno is when you watch him all the time, and then you come out of the team, and then you watch him when he comes back on. The level of control he has in terms of on the ball, but in terms of dictating the play and just easing situations. There were a couple of times where he won a couple of fouls or got them out. That was that lovely little turn where he did win a foul eventually, but got them out of the corner alongside Joe Linton. That was really good. And yeah, it was a really, really good overall performance. I'm very, very pleased with it. I'm very happy with it, and I think it's given us a basis for something to go on. In a way that I think wasn't there. I think there was a lot of panic after, a lot of really frustration and annoyance after Brighton, and I think there was a few panics after Chelsea in the league. But this obviously doesn't cancel those things out. This is a different game, and back at St James's Park, it's Newcastle. We've not really learned anything from this game, I don't think, in terms of nothing new except perhaps that Will Asula is kind of up and running in a Newcastle shirt, although he hasn't scored yet. Tonight was his best cameo by quite a distance. I think the fact that he had the confidence to take that shot on and hit the post. Lovely little layoff earlier on in his since after coming on just after he came on the halfway line, put himself about. And I think what I would say is on the basis of that, there is at least for me, he's a better option than playing Gordon down the middle, where if there's no Isak and Wilson, you play Gordon down the middle. You move Gordon away from not just you put Gordon in a position where he's not as effective, but you also move him away from a position where he is effective. So you sort of take away from both out wide and centrally. And I think in terms of Asula's, again, too many expectations isn't going to help him. But I think he showed against, all right, it was Chelsea's second string, but still, Axel Disasi, Benoit Badiashile had come on, I think, by that point. Tosin Adarabioyo, they're all Premier League, higher, top half Premier League players. And they're still going to be a really difficult task for him. And he really, I thought, stamps his authority on that game when he came on for Isak in a really, really positive way. So, as I say, the three players I want to give beyond Willock, who I've already mentioned, the three other players I really want to talk about are Kelly. I really want to give props to Kelly, Longstaff, and Will Asula, because it gave Newcastle a foothold, especially in that second half. What was really great about that second half was it felt deliberate. It felt like Newcastle gave Chelsea a brief to try and break them down, and they would just sit and try and win the game on the counter-attack. And obviously they hit the post with Asula. They had a goal disallowed for Longstaff. There were a couple of other opportunities as well, a couple of crosses from Isak before he went off where he pulled wide. And it really worked. It felt like Eddie Howard had thought about how to beat Chelsea really well and adapted in the game a bit better than he has done in recent weeks. That's another thing. Tonali staying on for longer will obviously go down well with the fans. And it's great, as I say, to see Tonali playing well. I want to ask the few people who are in the chat now, do you think what do you think the way forward for that midfield is long term? Because Joelinton, Tonali and Bruno together, they've never won a game. Newcastle, the record of, and I appreciate when I did this stats video, a couple of people said you can change stats to fit your narrative, and I'm not trying to push a narrative on Longstaff, despite what it might sound like. But the fact is that Newcastle stopped winning games this season when Longstaff came out the team. They've won again with him in the team. And those three midfielders have never won a game together, Joelinton, Bruno and Tonali. The difficult thing is that Newcastle really need that midfield to work. So what do you think the answer is? And as I said, the caveat to it with the midfield is Tonali and Bruno working together. It really worked together quite well against PSG at home last year when they were alongside Longstaff, because Longstaff took the pressure off them in a defensive sense, not even a defensive sense, more a sort of making sacrificial runs to open up the space, and those key passes that and covering the ground in different ways that those players don't necessarily do. I've always said that if you actually watch Tonali, Bruno and Joelinton together, they all do their jobs individually fairly well. And actually, so I find it difficult to criticise. I think Joelinton maybe slightly less so, because he has been poor at times this season, but particularly Bruno and Tonali together, if you watch them individually, it's difficult to criticise either of them for their performances. But what they bring together, there could be much more from that midfield. If you come back, as has been shown, I think Tonali and Bruno are both I don't know the words just got out of my head, but they're both they become amplified. That's the word I was looking for. They amplify their performances when they're next to Longstaff, because Longstaff does things that that really, yeah. I think I'm going to say, I've said it before. I've kind of, Dave's just come back and said the midfield combination is a really tricky problem. It's a really tricky problem, but Jolinton looks good on the wing. Ryan says, "Where'd you?" Sorry. Ryan says, "Apologies if you just covered it. I've just joined. Hi, Ryan." But looked like it was a nice balance in midfield. Sonali, Willock, and Longstaff. Willock and so we have talked about. We are literally talking about this right now. So you've joined at a really good time, Ryan. And this is the kind of I've just asked this question, so it's really you've joined at exactly the right time. If I think there is a real problem, and I've said this before with Jolinton in that midfield going forward. If Newcastle really want to be possession based, and the number 8s particularly need to be sort of high 80s, late sort of early 90s in terms of percent of accurate passes, and Jolinton is sort of early 80s, I think, which isn't good enough really, and we've seen that where he becomes alive, regardless of the style of play, is on the left, and that's always been the case. That was the case when he was at Hoffenheim under Nagelsmann. That was the case. Even in the few sort of like there were the few good performances he put under Bruce, they all came really from that left hand side or playing in a sort of dovetail with Callum Wilson. I always remember the Crystal Palace game, just as a side tangent, when he played up front with Wilson. They won 2-0, and he was phenomenal in that game. But people sort of were at the time saying, "Oh, he's not good enough." He was okay, but it was a phenomenal performance. It was one of those performances where if he put it in now, you'd think it was just standard Jolinton. But at the time, because people had sort of written him off, it was a bit of a begrudging sort of, oh, he was okay. But actually what he was doing was a lot of the pressing, a lot of the harrying, a lot of sort of intricate passes, linking really well with Wilson. And so I think that's really where he's still, you've got to remember, he came into midfield as a sort of an emergency. And I think just as we've sort of seen a little bit with maybe Longstaff as an individual, Byrne as an individual, Almiron as an individual, Murphy as an individual, reaching their limit under Howe now this season, it becoming a little bit more obvious that they're maybe not the way forward, not the sort of like they're not at the level where Newcastle want to go, and that's more obvious now than it perhaps was 2 years ago. Maybe it's as obvious and more obvious than it was 2 years ago that Jolinton in that midfield doesn't work so well. But on the left, he's always really good. That link up with Willock is really crucial in certain games, might not work in other games. To answer Ryan's point, I think at the moment, Newcastle, I'd love to be interested to see a midfield again on Saturday of Bruno, Tonali and Longstaff, because I'd just be really interested to see if he can if Longstaff can cover the ground to allow those other two, with Tonali sitting a bit more central, Bruno going a little bit further forward and trying to dictate things higher up against Rice. That's kind of what I'd be interested in seeing, with Jolinton on the left and Gordon on the right. I think because Gordon was quite effective tonight on the right, not in his sort of usual way, but I think Gordon on the right and Jolinton on the left is more effective than Gordon on the left and Murphy on the right, for example, as a collective. And I think that's kind of what I'd be interested in. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. Particularly Ryan, you've asked the question, what do you think? But to me, Willett was phenomenal as well. As I said, he was my man of the match. Would I start him against Arsenal? No, because I think if you start him, much less so than Longstaff, because Longstaff is a sort of more conservative type player, whereas we saw against Fulham, if you play too many if you play Willock alongside Jolinton and Bruno and Tonali, as a group, there's very little in terms of looking backwards to stop Havertz coming and picking that space up. I think that's the case. Ryan's just said, I worry that Bruno and Tonali try and occupy the same space at times and always gets in each other's way. I think that it is kind of the old Gerrard and Lampard thing, but also it's a thing of it's a thing of trying to cover the ground as well, which it basically what Longstaff does as he stops Bruno and Tonali both as a pair as he did against PSG, and I'll keep going back to that PSG game, but also individually as well. Tonight is a great example from a Tonali perspective. Sheffield United last year is a great example from a Bruno perspective, where basically they don't have to think about nearly as much and dealing with nearly as much as on the pitch in the game as when Longstaff's there, because Longstaff's covering those, he's making those sacrificial runs, he's covering the ground in a way that others aren't. So I'd be really interested to see that midfield three with Joe Linton on that right hand side against, would it be Ben White, I think, which would be a really interesting battle. And then you can bring, in the second half, you can bring Willock on, because if I remember correctly, Willock, it was one of those few games when Willock was fit last season, and I think he came on in the corresponding picture. Obviously, he crossed the ball for Gordon's goal, which involved Joe Linton as well. So I think the game can adapt in the second. You can adapt in the second half, but that's how I would start. I think with Longstaff, Tonali, and Bruno with Joe Linton on the left, based on what gets the best out of those players. But I think that ultimately, that's for me is why Newcastle was so comfortable tonight, is because it finally felt like they were playing square pegs in square holes, or round pegs in round holes, however you want to say it. There wasn't a player in the game where it felt like they were just shoehorned in the team for the sake of it. And yeah, you can say that, okay, well, Gordon was playing on the right, but actually, Gordon playing on the right has, if you watch the Amazon documentary, if you watch him back if you watch, and I've spoken to various different people, Gordon in the past. The great thing about Gordon was that he can occupy all three of those spaces, and so basically the front four spots is the cam, right mid, the left mid, and the striker. You know, that's how he's always. That was his thing, was his versatility. It's only since he's come to Newcastle and last season sort of reached levels at that left-hand side that he's become undroppable in that situation. But actually, I think that because the squad has the makeup that it does, it actually benefits to maybe play him further, as I say, on the right, because Gordon on the right is much more effective than both Almiron and Murphy. And it also allows, they've tried Barnes on that left-hand side, but as I say, specifically in this case, Joe Linton. So that's how I would line up on Saturday with that. I'll be obviously here to I'll be breaking down in a video tomorrow this game and sort of looking ahead and sort of talking a little bit about. I did say that I was going to stop doing sort of previews of matches, so I'll be looking a little bit more in depth back at this game, but with context of looking forward to Arsenal, and that's how I would go with it. It does, but as I say, it's a great problem to have suddenly, and having, Willock fit gives you gives you that issue, gives you that question to ask, because that was the whole problem with our season, is that Willock was never there, so there was never that ability to change anything. There was never that ability to have add dynamism. I mean, you've got the power of Joe Linton, you've got the guile of Bruno, and the technique and the technical ability to control the game of Tonali, but Willock's the one who adds the energy and the pace, and I think that's why I would start him from the bench and maybe change it a bit for a little bit later. But yeah, we'll start to think about maybe wrapping it up in about 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, if nobody else has anything else that they want to say. But to me, I think that's a really great performance. And I think, is it full time? Sorry, did Man City? Must have been full time. While I was talking, did Man City go through? Or sorry, did Spurs go through? Yeah, Spurs went through. Sorry, it's on, but I wasn't watching. Yeah, so I think that to me, this really feels like a big moment, and as I say, but it's also slightly frustrating in the sense that it's the first time that Eddie Howe's played square pegs in round holes and gone back to basics and played to this squad's strengths. It feels like they've been too busy trying to shoehorn players in for the sake of it, in terms of Tonali, specifically Tonali, Joelinton, and Bruno, which if you can maybe, I mean, that might be able to work as a three. Is if has been pointed out, you can try and get Tonali to sit a bit deeper and stop moving around and try to get into Bruno's spaces and that and make make Tonali the actual six, not rather than, which I don't think Eddie Howe wants to do. I think this is kind of the issue, is that Eddie Howe is wanting to wanting that fluidity, is wanting Tonali to move and Bruno to move, and that's why I think it doesn't quite work. Whereas the idea of having Tonali just as a plain six might work, but I don't think it. Might be an idea worth trying, but I don't think it's what it's what it's what Eddie Howe wants to do. I think that's why this works, because as I say, that if they're both moving around trying to cover loads of ground, and there's always loads of space to cover, as seems to be the case with Bruno and Tonali and Joelinton when they play together. Suddenly, when Longstaff's in there, that space shrinks, that they look more compact, and it means that Bruno and Tonali don't have to move around as much, and they can focus on dictating the game and moving around a little bit. Ryan says Kelly played great, as we said. Yeah, probably before you joined, we've spoken at length about how great Kelly was, and his natural position. I think it's a really good point as well. There's suddenly a question mark over Kelly or Burn. As I said, Burn's been Newcastle's best player, I think, this season so far. But if at Chelsea, it might be a turning point for Kelly to come in and play alongside Share and look a little bit. Newcastle look a little bit more able to deal with players with moves in behind, and he's also really good on the ball as well, which Burn naturally, might not be in the same way. And so it might suit Newcastle to start playing Kelly a little bit more as well. That's something that could be considered down the line too. But yeah, a really, really good performance. And I think Kelly's been really, really unlucky generally, because at the start of the season, he played left back when Hall was having difficulties. Hall seems to have really grown into that left back situation in the last few weeks. I thought he was really, really good at Chelsea. He was really good again tonight as well. And it's quietly sort of, he's not perfect defensively, but quietly, he's not. It's not. Lots of people said he was really poor against Southampton on the opening day, and he was really struggling. He came out of the team for a bit. Kelly came back in. Didn't really. He struggled as well. Burn was the only consistent sort of defender, maybe Share as well, but Burn particularly was really good, which sort of dried the opportunities up for Kelly. Now I think he's in with a shout, and perhaps that's something to consider on Saturday as well. To change Kelly. Anyway, I'll be looking more in depth at the team choices that Eddie Howe made and why it worked, and what that means going into the game against Arsenal on Saturday. Anyway, thanks so much, guys. If there's nothing else that anybody has, let me know if there's anything else you want to think. But at the moment, it feels like I'm certainly coming to the end of what I've got to say. But if you have any more thoughts, drop them into the chat. But yeah, I'll be back. If not, then I'll be back on tomorrow to look ahead to that game, but also on Sunday morning to look back at the Arsenal game, because I'm at Hull City, as I say, second part of my journey across English and European football. And telling you, talking about the community of football and the stories in football and what it means for people at different football clubs, why football is this great sport, is kind of the thing that I'm going for. And doesn't matter where the game is, I'll be there, speaking to fans, speaking to people, and I'm really excited about this series. So please do continue to join me for that. But if there's nothing else, I will see you tomorrow for full debrief of this game and a little bit of a look forward to Arsenal as well. Thanks so much, guys. Like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. That would be really helpful. Help me grow the channel. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Cheers, guys. Have a good night.